Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. I know we're in this intimate, amazing, most wonderful perfume store, perfume experience that is the Stéle Nolita location. And we are here. If you see these incredible flowers, this incredible backdrop, and hopefully you've had the chance to smell these incredible 7 creations and the accompanying raw material for FLORSTALGIA, which is a Givaudan exhibit at Stéle. To my knowledge, this is the first of its kind where a huge oil house has partnered with a retailer. It's so wonderful, so special. I'm so thrilled to be moderating this panel tonight. My name is Emma Vernon. I host Perfumery podcast, and I have the most illustrious panel to my left. So before we get into anything, I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Belanger, founder of Stéle, fragrance fan, newbie, musician, creator, all kinds of stuff. Welcome. Thank you.
I'm Jake Levy, former interior designer, now shop boy at Stéle. Here 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Hello, I'm Rodrigo Flores-Roux, and I'm a perfumer.
An incredible VP perfumer of Givaudan. The most modest introduction, a legend that I am sitting next to. I'm so excited to be here with all 3 of you to be starting this conversation. And I think the first thing to kick this off is, why are we here? So, Matt, I'm curious, why flowers? Why are we doing this?
Why flowers? So I love flowers. We love flowers. Kind of on the weekends when I'm not here, or on the weekdays now when I'm not here, I find me in my garden smelling flowers, growing flowers.
What do you grow?
Roses, all kinds of iris, all kinds of stuff. But I can't believe we're all here today. This is really amazing. So thank you. And I can't, it's just like so amazing to have the opportunity to do this. And thank you all for being here. And the first thing that came to my mind was flowers, just because I love them so much. And I think it's really of the season and you know, of the moment, but it's also really an entry point for, you know, the conversations that we have with y'all. And so that's kind of how it all came about.
Amazing. And then my next question would be, Rodrigo, why FLORSTALGIA, and how has the flower in perfume evolved from sort of classic perfumery to the flowers we're smelling in 2025 launches?
Well, we actually tend to forget that flowers are the centerpiece of perfumery. Let's not forget, as a biologist, I affirm this very strongly. Also, flowers are sexual organs, and we are all about sex. I clearly state it all the time. Mm-hmm. And so there's basically no perfume in the world that does not contain a flower note, either synthetic or natural. And that is where it all starts. The fields of flowers in southern France were actually the initiator of the industry of the perfumery, the way we know it. And also throughout the second part of the 19th century, and then during the 1920s and 30s, flowers became very, very clear themes that people were looking for in order to fall in love with perfume. Mm-hmm. Of course, we have other things. We have vanilla, we have amber, etc. And all of this, you know, the marriage of all this, you know, makes great perfume. Mm-hmm. But re-exploring almost the primal impulse of perfume, which is flowers, for me is very important, because we need to remember that phrase, you know, let's just stop and smell the roses. Mm-hmm. And also in a time of turmoil and turbulence, I think stopping and smelling the roses is very important. You know, flowers are symbols of love, flowers are symbols of friendship, flowers are symbols of relationships, of family bonding, and of connection. You know, flowers get pollinated, they have sex, they produce fruit. And it is very important right now in this time of very, very difficult, obscure separatism thought, in order to be united by something that really, really links us together, which is flowers.
It's true. Flowers are such a unifying thing, and everybody, even before you were, you know, in the perfume world, you were growing flowers in your garden. So it's a great connector. And it makes me wonder, Jake, what is the Stéle perfumer looking for in florals? Are they looking for florals? What's that give and take?
So I would say there's a lot of conversation in gourmands. Everyone talks about gourmands. I would say 8 out of 10 people who walk into Stéle ask for a floral. I've never had anyone walk in and ask to smell like a Cinnabon. At least not at Stéle. I know that this exists. I know that there's a multi-billion-dollar industry, but I feel that there's definitely a connection with the artisanal community in connecting real plants, real life experience of scents into fragrances. And it's nothing to do with natural. There's also a big obsession with natural, but it's not real. It's also mythology. Most people who look for natural fragrances will purchase a fragrance they love. Now, the point is people want to connect with a memory, with a scent that means something to them. And the closest you can get to real life and to a bottle that means something to someone, it creates excitement. It creates the moment. A big trend we see right now is dirty florals. What's the deal with dirty florals? I guess people need permission to wear florals. Florals are like, my grandma wore it. My auntie wore it. There's not a lot of
nostalgic.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so dirty florals kind of give permission for someone to wear a floral today. For example, if you look at the tuberose fragrance right over here, it's a juicy floral. Maybe it's not a dirty floral, but it is a modernized take on a tuberose.
Which we're going to be smelling shortly, too. So everyone's going to get a chance in a few minutes.
But you even see it with, for example, Dias and Durga coming up with brown flowers. Although, I would say it's hardly a brown flower. I can show you a brown flower in the shop. They'll make you, run out. But that's
in my garden as well.
You're going to be blown away.
But the point is people are looking for something with something else. Now, that is the beginning. There's more to it. There's more than just that initial, relationship with that particular thing. But,
Well, you mentioned something with something else, and it's exactly what we have before us with these 7 incredible flowers, where if you haven't had a chance to come up here and smell these, hopefully there's more sessions left during the exhibit, or maybe after this you can. But these...
You can always see little Rodrigo. He's,
yes.
Little Rodrigo.
Yes.
There is a hologram.
Yes, there is.
Well, a friend of mine who loves me said, well, finally the world is better because we have many Rodrigos around.
Yeah, put it in your pocket.
7 of them.
I posted on my story, I said, honey, I shrunk Rodrigo Flores-Roux. So if you see all 7 of these, there is a natural that then Rodrigo was inspired around and created a perfume around. So Rodrigo, there are other flowers in Perfumery, right? Why are these the 7 ones that you wanted to showcase? And can you tell everyone which 7 you picked?
Yes, actually, well, the flowers are rose, jasmine, tuberose, carnation, violet, ylang ylang, iris. That's 7, right? Yes. 7 is a very strange number, but it just came like that. We left hanging orange flower, which is one of my favorite things ever, and also gardenia, which is also one of my favorite flowers. And then we can continue doing magnolias, etc., etc. But these were kind of, for me, kind of the pillars of perfumery, the way I look at the history of perfumery in the first half of the 20th century. Also, what we wanted to do is like, okay, people like violet, again, grandma or my aunt, or jasmine, that smells old and dirty, and so on, or rose, or something powdery, and so on. So the idea was to bring possibly, in some of them, it's a classical inspired structure, not all of them, and then kind of not only utilizing interesting technologies in order to continue manifesting the floral theme, but also utilizing a very specific extract, all of them natural, proprietary of Givaudan, that are highly technical and very, very, they're very chiseled, let's just say that, in order for them to manifest the flower in a new, different way. So for ylang ylang, we have a fraction from the Comores Islands that I'm very involved emotionally to it. From carnation absolute is never really good. It smells a little bit like black olives and it's kind of dirty in the bad way. And so we have done modified the absolute in order to make it extra pure. The rose is the centerpiece, is basically an extract from rose water, which is really cool. So there's an upcycling technology and so on. So, and then, well, I love working with florals. Also, there's no accident. My last name means flowers in Spanish. And it was just kind of a nice divertimento, a nice, reintroduction of floral themes that could have been forgotten or could have been abandoned. Violet and carnation are trending big time. They're going to become, I think, a new flavor. So there you go.
Yeah, I want to talk about carnation.
Yes.
I have been manifesting the return of carnation because I love carnation perfumes, and it's something that we associate with so many vintage perfumes. So maybe right now you could take us through, we could pass around in here the carnation scent, and maybe you can talk a little bit about what past carnation scents might have smelled like and how this is similar or different.
Carnation, Dianthus caryophyllus, it is actually a flower that since time memorial has been related to love. And also everybody knows that carnation smells like clove butter, because it is very rich in the principal component of the spice, which is something called eugenol. And another kind of cousin of eugenol called isoeugenol. So those two raw materials can be used in perfume forever. And of course, we can mention things that are very clovey, like L'air du Temps by Nina Ricci, or I want to say, for example, Mitsuko is very rich in carnation, etc. So for this perfume, what I wanted to do is evoke, something that interests me. I am an art lover. And so we had printed this little postcard. This is a portrait by Hans Holbein, the German painter that then actually was very involved with the English royalty during the time of Henry VIII. And this is a very eligible bachelor, and he's holding in his hand a little carnation, a five petal carnation. They are called Sweet Williams. Great name also, Sweet William.
Sweet William.
And so this is a portrait that was sent to princesses in order to say, look, he's cute. Would you want to marry him? And his manifestation of him being eligible and like ready for love is the little flower in his hand. So I wanted to utilize that thing of love and bonding in order to make a perfume that has all the salicylates and the also spectre materials that could you find in a Ledis de Balenciaga or in a L'air du Temps by Nina Ricci, but then twist them around, utilizing some cool captives from Givaudan, notably one salicylate that I helped develop called Karma Flor, and utilizing it also in an overdose way in order to make this perfume that smells like spices, smells a little bit powdery, smells very salicylate, etc. But it smells very new because we added an interesting saltiness to it, which the Karma Flor gives, and also doing also a little wink to classic perfumery. I use a kind of a clover note, Le Trèfle Incarnata, incarnate clover, which was one of the beginners of this kind of transparent floral that right now it doesn't seem that transparent because Hedion and so on, but that was how this carnation came to be.
So for people who are smelling this in the room right now, if you were going to describe what they should smell for in just like simple terms, maybe all three of you, like how would you describe what you're smelling just in non-note terms?
So my grandmother's favorite flower is carnation, and it always felt so like kind of old school, but this is just, to me, it's just so like modern and fresh and, kind of spicy a little bit. That's what I would say.
I would say I'm getting the softness of the petals. If you ever feel carnation, the petals are so soft, they're almost silky, and there's definitely a silkiness to this. And I actually wonder, did you make these fragrances to personify the florals that you picked, or did you make a fragrance about the florals?
I think all of the above. I also, for all of them, they have an emotional history. It will be the Sweet William, or I'll tell you some other stories. I love storytelling. For me, it's important to express in words what perfumes are, because I always say that perfumes are conversations, and they're spoken in a language that is silent, but we all know how to speak. I always say that. And in this particular perfume, I wanted to revisit the carnation without it being clunky. So my word here will be, I think it's a very sassy perfume.
I think it's sassy too.
Yeah.
Very
It's
sassy.
what I'm wearing right now.
Yes. Well, you're sassy. We know that.
I take that as a compliment. So I'm curious then, Jake and Matt, as you've been going through this exhibit and as people have been coming in asking for the stinky, raunchy florals, what has been surprising or interesting that you just couldn't have anticipated about the way consumers want or don't want certain florals?
So I think the most interesting thing about people coming into a perfume shop is a lot of people would come in with preconceived ideas. And I think this was instilled and built into us by the structure that makes you purchase perfumes remotely. Now, you walk into somewhere and you're like, I want a rose. possible, and it's possible you're thinking about something, but it's possible that you don't want a rose. It's possible that you just want a fragrance. Now, so people will walk in and say they want a rose, and you don't want to debate them or argue with them. You want to show them roses, but that doesn't mean they're walking out with a rose. 9 out of 10, they're walking out with whatever they love. Now, definitely there are people that love roses and will pick rose every single time, and that is beautiful and that is fantastic. But when you open the possibility of chance, when you open following your heart and your nose versus instructions, when you open not listening to influencers, no offense,
Not taken.
and rather following your heart, just like you smelt it, you love it, go for it. You don't like it, you're not going to like it tomorrow, you're not going to like it next week. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. It doesn't really matter. If you like something, buy it. Don't get too obsessed with it. If you can afford it, if it's good for you, if you're happy about it, and don't FOMO. It's fine not to buy it, anything at all. People have to return enjoyment and pleasure into this field and less thinking. And I think it's very evident in here. When you remove the ability to buy these fragrances, the exploration and the interest and where people landed in this collection into the ones they loved is completely different. Because you
That's
cannot buy
fascinating.
these. You can't. There's already a black market interest. I mean, after all these will disappear.
We know
Maybe
a
one
guy.
day.
Come find us.
Yes, exactly.
I think also like just hearing the conversations with people, all week is bringing back memories, right? Each flower brings back a memory of, whether you were like gardening with a family member when you were a kid, or the favorite flower that, a relative loved or something like that. You hear a lot of people sharing those stories, and I feel like this really brought that to life for people this week, which was great to see.
I think there's something so interesting about being on the retail side and being a perfumer and being next to each other, because I think you both have to be expert listeners, but also really intuitive. You hear a customer come in and say, I want rose, or I don't want rose. But maybe based on what they're gravitating towards or what they wear, they incidentally love rose or they hate it. And Rodrigo, I'm sure that you have a similar situation when you're working with clients. They're like, oh, no more patchouli. And then it turns out like their favorite mod is like, overdosed in patchouli. So from your experience.
Happens all the time. It's fun.
Yeah. So I'm curious, in your experience then, when you're creating, how, I don't even know exactly what I want. I think just, are you ever, showing clients these notes that they've kind of poo-pooed and it's their favorite mod and you're like, surprise? Like, what's a typical?
Yes, well, perfume, amongst other things, is very counterintuitive. It's like you end up falling in love with the wrong person, and for the good reasons. And one thing that's a mantra, and I have discussed it with many colleague perfumers, is that you, as a principle, you do not show a client a possibility of a perfume that you don't like. If you don't like it, it's going to be very complicated, because you will have not only an emotional blockage, you will be dancing with the ugly girl for months and months and months. So
Okay.
yeah, or the ugly boy. Sorry, the ugly person, and
Ugly person. Now everybody's included.
Yeah,
We can all be ugly.
in this time of separation.
Yes.
Anyway, so that is one of the important things. The second is like, I always say there's no wrong answer in perfumery, because there's always a yes behind it. And it's like, okay, that fragrance has patchouli, but can you do this, or can you put that, etc. I have several clients here, and we do that. We do those exercises. We do that, and then we discover together. Always, and they would take ownership of a very nice mistake, or a very nice exaggeration, or a very let's try it kind of moment, etc. Perfumers are experimenters by nature. We have to be curious, and we have to also to be looking at the possibility that maybe the most uncanny idea, or something that you kind of know it's not going to work, maybe at the right time, in a good environment and with a good emotion, the perfume is going to gel and happen.
Okay, well, I think what that leads me to is, say someone comes up to this counter and they're just walking around the Stéle store, or they are your client. Where would each of you take someone who thinks that they don't like florals, where would you, whether it's one of these 7 perfumes or in general, and then on the contrary, where would you take someone who's like, give me the filthiest, stinkiest, like raunchy underground floral I could think of, and maybe it exists in these 7, and we can talk about 2 of them, an easy one and a hard one.
So I'm gonna use one of these guys, one of these perfumes that I did as kind of the easy one, but again, it's counterintuitive because I get a lot of response to the tuberose. The tuberose is of these perfumes by far the fruitiest, and the fruit is on purpose. It's a very saturated Technicolor wild strawberry with a kind of a sorbet thing happening, and then the big floral is tuberose, and then we use a fantastic African flower called Caro Carunde, and tuberose is not the initiating floral perfume for someone. It's like you don't give a tuberose perfume to a 15-year-old girl, etc. But why not? So this perfume kind of talks to me about saturation, colorful, is very joyful. It has a lot of depth, but at the same time, it is easy to wear and it's a crowd pleaser. It's I would say the most accessible of them, if you will, and I like that kind of accessibility, that kind of easiness to it, even if it packs a bunch and it's a big fragrance. The fragrance that could be one of the most challenging, if you will, is not here. It's an old fragrance by Caron called Le Narcisse Noir, the Black Narcissus. Already the name is kind of quite crazy, and it's a fragrance that it will be fantastic on a very, very happy widow.
Okay. A widow. Okay.
Well, she's a widow because of a reason.
Okay. So everyone is smelling the tuberose scent right now, right? So what should they be smelling for? Fruitiness, for strawberry?
Yeah, it's like it's a Technicolor fruity top note on a tuberose that is actually devoid of the way too green or snappy greenness of tuberose. It doesn't have the eucalyptus note. I went more into the big petal and the lactonic part of a tuberose that works very well, with lighter fruits, and then utilizing a very frank white floral like Caro Carunde and then apricot smells, etc.
So good.
It becomes something else. It's a very kaleidoscopic floral.
It's so juicy and fruity. I love this so much. And I know you wanted to talk about the ylang ylang as well. We're gonna open it up to questions in a few, but I think we have one more fragrance that we want everyone to smell right now. So tell us about this ylang ylang scent.
Ylang ylang is making a comeback. I know we are perfume aficionados here, but just to give a little bit of a background. Ylang ylang is the flower of a tree that it grows all over the Indian Ocean, mostly in the islands around Madagascar, and it has been an essential oil that has been used in perfumes since the 1870s. It is quite abundant because the trees are in bloom the entire year, so there is always the crop is not, it doesn't stop. What happened with ylang ylang, and for example, ylang ylang was so important at one given moment. In Chanel number 5, there's over 10% of ylang ylang essential oil. Also, it's very poetic. Ylang ylang means the flower of flowers in Tagalog, in the language of the Philippines. And so there's a lot of lore about ylang ylang. But what happened is that the center of production of ylang ylang is either Madagascar or the Comores Islands, and the Comores Islands were originally a French colony.
Okay.
So when, in a peaceful treaty, the French decided to allow the Comores Islands to become an independent country, they left, except for one island called Mayotte, they left the archipelago, and then they left them to their own devices. So the quality of ylang ylang started degrading because nobody was really controlling when and how you pick the flowers. So when I learned perfumery in the late 80s, ylang ylang smelled still very nice, very fruity and very floral. And then it degraded. The distillation of the flowers it was done in a very faulty way. So we decided, perfumers kind of stayed away from ylang ylang. So the ylang ylang quality that is used here is from one of the Comores Islands, a small one called Moeli, and I went there in 2010.
Wow.
Like you have to fly to many places in order to get to that little island. And we were kind of retraining the people that were picking the flower, and also Givaudan created a program of sustainability and ethical sourcing in order to give them new distillation stills, etc. And then we also cooperated. We built a school. We paid for computers for the children, etc.
Incredible.
So I was part of that program. So it's called Ilang Ilang Mueli, and it is one of several initiatives that Givaudan has done through the past 15 years, and it's very dear to my heart because when we went there, for example, it was Ramadan. And the Comores is a Muslim republic, and the ladies and the youngsters who were helping in order to pick the flowers, they're not supposed to do anything during the day. They said, no, we put the Ramadan on pause in order to go and learn what is happening with our ilangi langi, because they call it like that. And they have songs, so they pick the flowers from the trees, singing this ilangi langi song, and it was very, very moving.
Wow.
And then I made a fragrance that originated this one, but I made a very simple accord, and I showed it to them. This is what we do with the essential oil of the flower that you are picking with your hands, and they absolutely understood it. They could discover the utilization of a product that for them is just like a vanilla bean or a grain of pepper or a nutmeg, because they do have other spices in the island. So it's a very dear product for me. The fraction that we utilize here is mostly the deeper, spicier, woody part of ylang ylang, something that smells a little bit like Casablanca lilies. It is definitely that molecule that some people say take the flowers out to the window, which is this kind of woody, spicy thing that smells a little bit like bacon. And but used in very, very small amounts.
It does have a smokiness.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Oh, interesting.
And without the wintergreen or mouth-washy things that other ylang ylang qualities have. It's very, very unique.
That must have been really special to be able to show the finished product of this is what I'm doing with this ylang ylang. And I want to be mindful of time because I know everybody is standing, and thank you all for standing and listening to this amazing panel. So before we open it up to you, my final question for all three of you is, what is each of your perfect florals? It's a scent just for you, whether it exists or not. How do you like your florals? Let's start with Matt.
Oh, man. Fruity, rose, a little spicy. Very much like a lot of these here. Tuberose one. Yeah, that's mine.
Amazing. Jake?
I think I'd have to go with a rose. A simple, perfect rose would be just beautiful.
I like them animalic. I like them dirty. So everybody knows here that I love a caca joke, and
We have time if you want.
yes.
We got an audience.
Or believe me,
Sure.
there's indole in every single one of these guys, and a little bit of a civetty kind of funkiness in florals is always fantastic. So I always look for that.
Me too. I love it.